Hello, hi. If you have no idea what is going on, my name is Bree. I am a late diagnosed autistic human, and I talk about things that matter to me sometimes. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with school and education as an undiagnosed autistic child, and some of the things that really stuck out to me looking back, and maybe even stuck out to me in the moment, but I just didn't know anything else and I didn't know how to fix what I was going through and how these things might be especially significant to the context of autism. And maybe this could potentially be helpful or useful to someone out there who has either gone through something similar or maybe knows someone who is going through something similar, whether or not it be a child. So, just to start off the bat, I basically only made it through about sixth grade before I had to leave school and switch to homeschooling. I did most of my school years through online school, and that was kind of the result of all of the experiences that I went through. But for the years that I was in school, for most of them, I was bullied, and I can recall being bullied. And it's funny, I was like looking back a few weeks ago and I was like, no, I wasn't bullied that much. But then I started like thinking through each of my school years and realized that there was kind of always a point in which I was dealing with that. So that was definitely a big aspect of my school experience. But what I'm going to focus more on in this video is kind of the personal struggles that I had internalized and maybe not necessarily like, oh, this person was bullying me, even though that is very valid and unfortunate, and no one should ever have to go through that. But what I might focus on most in this video is my transition from elementary to middle school, as this is when things became exceptionally difficult for me and ultimately led to my downfall. um, Essentially, looking back through those years, the older I got, the more difficult it was to keep up with my peers and the world around me and the thing that is going to school for essentially 40 hours a week every week as a child. So I also moved schools a lot. I didn't have a stable childhood. I went to three elementary schools and I was on my second middle school before I dropped out, switched to online school. But once I got to middle school, I found school unbearable. I struggled so much during this time period of my life. I didn't quite understand why I hated it so much, but I just knew that there was a lot going on and that I couldn't keep up with it. And it got to a point where I would do absolutely anything that I could to skip school. I faked sick as much as I could. I missed as many days as I could before we were getting letters like, hey, you can't do that or you're going to have a little knock on your door, you know what I mean? And so I would try to stay home as much as I could. Obviously, that didn't solve the problem, and I never quite felt rested or stable enough to go back, but obviously I had to. Beyond that, I remember a point in sixth grade where it was just another day. I was waking up. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I was just like, okay, how do I escape? Like, I'm gonna escape. I'm gonna pull some fuck shit and I'm gonna wiggle my way out of this and like no one's ever gonna know and I'm just not gonna have to go to school. So instead of walking to the bus stop, I just kept walking through my neighborhood and just went and sat in some random person's yard, thinking that no one was going to notice that I didn't get on the bus and that I skipped school that day. I think it's so funny looking back, but also kind of sad because it truly became so awful for me that I was willing to do anything and everything that I could to get out of it. I think a big thing about the transition from elementary to middle school is that there is so much change. When you're a child and you're in elementary school, you are in the same classroom essentially all day with the same people. You have a routine and you know what to expect, I think there's less stimulation going on overall. There's not a loud bell ringing 7 times a day, and you're not walking through halls with hundreds of people that are noisy and smelly and crowded. I specifically remember one of the hardest things for me at school being any type of break that we were given, or any free time where people would normally socialize, for example. Lunch, specifically in middle school, became this like threat to me. I would walk into the lunchroom and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm here now. I know it's time to eat lunch, and I know that this is where I'm supposed to do that. And I just remember walking through the lunchroom and just looking at everyone, like just trying to absorb everything that was going on around me and just kind of like standing there not knowing what the fuck to do because I had no friends. It was difficult for me to make friends. I didn't know how to make friends. I was often really, really isolated at school. At least once I switched to middle school, it got harder and harder to kind of socialize with people or find a little group to stick with. And I remember lunch specifically would be one of the worst things for me throughout the day. Another thing that changed for me was that I started to get migraines, and this wasn't like every once in a while type of thing. The mere thought of going to school and the amount of stress that that like brought onto me, I would cry every morning before school. I would often cry at school, so I would have to leave a class or maybe during the lunch period. Sometimes I would just have to get up and go to the bathroom and just cry. And I would literally just cry in there because for whatever reason, I was so overwhelmed. I was so stressed. I was so upset that I just needed to cry. And this would usually be like several times throughout the day. And every single day, by the time that I got home, or maybe it would be about halfway through the day, I would get an awful headache. I would get an awful headache. And when I tell you that I popped ibuprofen like it was candy, as an elementary and middle schooler, I genuinely did. I was taking headache medicine every single day because I would get headaches every single day that I went to school. By the time that the day was almost over, I was so unbelievably depleted and just done. And I couldn't do anything but just like space out or cry. And by the time that I got home, I would just go straight to my bed and just lay there with my pounding headache and my bowl of Tylenol, just waiting for the pain to stop and waiting for it to go away and waiting to feel like I could be human again. Except I never quite got there because it's almost like as soon as I had the chance to go lay in my bed and try and process the whole 8 hours of social torture and stress and just before I got to process my day, I was already mortified at the thought of the next one. I would just think to myself, I can't do that again. I cannot do that again. I can't do it. Like, I don't have it in me. I don't know what to do. And it was just this endless cycle that I couldn't escape because I didn't have adequate time to process the day that I had just experienced, and being at school was so daunting to me. I remember feeling so confused all the time, just watching people around me and watching people talk to their friends and listening to other people's conversations and just feeling genuinely confused. I didn't understand how they got there. I didn't understand how everyone around me seemed okay and I didn't. I think this was one of the worst things for me. I knew as a kid that everyone has to go to school, and adults in my life would tell me that too. Everyone has to go to school. No one likes going to school. And I thought, okay, no one likes going to school, but is everyone leaving classrooms multiple times a day to cry and shut down in the bathroom and eating ibuprofen for dinner and disassociating and crying themselves to sleep because they don't want to go back in the morning? Does everyone do that? Because if they do, then okay, that means I'm normal. But I knew that they didn't. I didn't think that they did, despite people telling me, no one likes school, everyone hates school, and this and that. I really hate to think about the fact that I was that young and prescribed antidepressants like it was nothing. I was literally on like antidepressants, anti anxiety medication. I was going to therapy, and nothing seemed to help. No one seemed to be able to identify what it was that I was going through. And it just made everything so much worse because I felt like no one understands me. And I felt like I had this thing and I didn't know what the thing was, but I was like, okay, there's this thing like inside of me. I am this way, but I feel like I'm the only one that can see it and no one else can see it. But I can, and I'm invisible, but I'm feeling everything all at once and I don't know what to do. What do I do with this? So, as I said, it eventually got to the point where it was so bad and I was missing so much school and I was just mentally and physically in shambles. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I begged my parents to let me leave public school and switch to online school. This ultimately happened for me. I switched to online school and I was doing so much better. I was not having migraines every day. I was not crying myself to sleep at night or in the morning. I was not consumed by school and everything that it was. I was able to move forward in the sense that I felt so much more okay, despite still struggling with depression and some other things. It definitely felt like the right decision for me. With this, though, came more pain, I suppose, because I was reminded of the fact that for some reason I wasn't normal. Like the adults around me would say, and like other kids would talk about, everyone hates school, but everyone's not doing this. Everyone seemed to be making it through, even though they hate it. And everyone else is still sitting with people at lunch and they're going to school and they're going out with their friends and they're doing all of these things. Why am I not doing that? Why couldn't I do that? I don't know, but I know that it happened and I know that there is some sort of discrepancy between what I'm seeing in everyone else my age and the thing that is me and the way that I'm experiencing the world. So I was very, very bothered and hurt by the fact that I felt like something was wrong with me. I felt like I wasn't normal and I wanted so deeply to be normal. Everyone wants to be normal. That's how we survive, right? Humans need acceptance and we need community and we need social interaction, but I realized I couldn't seem to perform the way the people around me were. So I ultimately tried returning back to school in 8th grade. Same exact situation, same exact physical, mental health symptoms, and just immediately went back to online schooling. But by the time senior year came around, I realized I want to go to college. I want to do this, and I don't know how to do this. I'm a first generation student, so I didn't really have any help from my parents, and doing online school wasn't very supportive in terms of guidance counselors or college prep and things like that. So I decided I'm going to make myself finish out senior year in public school. Now, I'll just say I survived. I graduated from that public school during COVID, actually, 2020 is when I graduated. It was, lo and behold, the same situation for me, except this time I was old enough, or not old enough, but I guess had enough resources to self medicate. So that's essentially how I was getting through it. I would go to school, high most days. I would still cry in the bathroom during lunch periods, though. I would go to the library, and part of it sucked and hurt because I couldn't manage to make friends or find someone to sit with during that time, but it was also my relief from the day. I looked forward to lunch because it was the time that I could get away from everything and all the noise and all the people and all the classes and the never ending chatter. I could get away from that and I could just go sit in a corner and read a book or like secretly eat grapes out of my book bag because you're not allowed to eat in the library. I would usually go hungry because of that, but I think going and hiding in the libraries was part of what got me through my senior year and also self-medicating. And ultimately, I cannot even begin to express how much better college was for me in terms of everything, everything but living. Roommates. That's a whole nother. I could write a book on my roommate horror stories. Actually, not exaggerating. It was everything I wanted in the sense that you have control over your own schedule. I could take as many online classes as I wanted, especially since I entered during COVID. So I could control my schedule. I could decide what classes I wanted to take. I could decide when I wanted to take them. If I didn't want to leave the house at all on a Wednesday, then I wouldn't schedule any classes for a Wednesday. I mean, college was heaven relative to the rest of my education, but that's a whole nother thing and it can come with its own challenges as well. But this video was solely focused on kind of that traditional public school K to 12 situation. I just can't imagine how different things could have been if I or my family or just anyone had the knowledge that this child is on the autism spectrum. Like I cannot imagine how that might have changed my experience, whether internally or externally, because it was so hard to grow up and watch all of my peers and notice that there was something going on that for whatever reason I wasn't able to match up to them and what they were doing. And I was told by everyone around me, this is normal, all of this is normal, everyone hates this, nobody likes this, like you're just a normal kid living a normal life. And it was so obvious to me that something was going on, right? Like, this is not normal, however you want to put it. I had a really fucking hard time, and I would never wish that on any child. Honestly, when I see school buses today, like the yellow school bus, I swear to God, I like flinch. I'm like, get that away from me. Like, get that shit away from me. I don't think back to my school years. It is not a fun time. It was honestly some of the worst years of my life. I think for a lot of people, school years are something nice to reminisce on, or maybe look back on, or maybe it was fun, or, they were the simpler days. And while I can, maybe relate to some of that, I really can't relate to most of it. I think that they were genuinely the worst years of my life and that things could only look up from there. But yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience with being an undiagnosed autistic child and public school. I think it is really important for us late diagnosed people to kind of reflect on and talk about our experiences if we're willing, because it kind of just highlights how difficult things can really be when you have no access to being able to understand yourself or your family or your parents, or just no one around you knows how you are actually experiencing the world. And as a child, that can be so detrimental and so damaging. And I really hope that one day we live in a world where there are less and less late diagnosed autistic people in general, but especially women since that seems to be who it affects the most. I think that's all I have to say for now. So if you listen to me ramble, thanks. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, your night, week, year. I don't know. Do something nice for yourself today. Okay. Bye.